What's up guys, Justin here with the RenderingEssentials.com, back with another SketchUp and Twinmotion tutorial for you. So in today's video I wanted to teach you how to quickly swap out SketchUp objects for Twinmotion objects inside of your models. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so we've talked a little bit about some videos in the past about how to use Twinmotion's vegetation placement tools in order to place things quickly inside of your renderings. So I wanted to show you another way to quickly replace objects that are inside of your SketchUp model inside of Twinmotion, just in case you want to place things inside of your SketchUp model instead of in Twinmotion. And so what we have here is we have a model that I've downloaded from the 3D warehouse. And this model is, and I can't say the whole name, the House in Crozon Agents. It's this. So Google this name, or not Google this name, but look for this name by Andy Didiich in the 3D warehouse, and you can download this model and follow along. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these plans which have been placed inside of SketchUp and replace them in Twinmotion. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about is I wanted to talk a little bit about the kinds of plants that are inside of your model and what kind of a difference that's going to make. And so what I mean is, if we take a look at this model, there's two different kinds of trees in here. There's a bunch of two-dimensional trees, which you can see, and what I've done is I've gone through and I've grouped them all inside of my outliner just to make everything easier to find inside of Twinmotion. But what I've done is I've taken all of these two-dimensional trees, which these are the trees that are just kind of two-dimensional images. I've put those in a group, and then I've also put all of these 3D pine trees in a group. So these 3D pine trees are a little bit weird in the sense that they're basically a tree trunk and then a bunch of images inside of them, and that can be a little bit problematic sometimes when importing into Twinmotion. I may make another video about that. I'm probably not going to get too far into that in this case. What I've done here is I've just kind of put them in their own group for now so that they're separate, so you can turn them on and off if you want to. But generally speaking, the reason that this can be a little bit problematic is with the replacement process and these reading as being kind of multiple objects inside of one group. But like I said, we're not going to get too deep into that in this video. The other thing I'm going to do really quick is, if you look at the two-dimensional trees, so if I hide the 3D trees, you can see how some of these two-dimensional trees aren't all the way on the ground in here. So I'm going to use an extension really quick called DROPGC in order to drop these on the ground, just to make sure that they're all on this plane. So I'm going to go in here, and I will link to a video about that extension in the notes down below, but I'm just going to use the extension DROPGC in order to drop all of these so that they're intersecting with this plane. And so once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to save our changes, and we're going to go into Twinmotion. So I'm going to go over into Twinmotion. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete out the starting ground, because we don't really want that. But what we are going to do is go into our library and we're going to add a landscape. So we're going to add a flat landscape in here. And I will link to my video about doing that in the notes down below. But we just want this to have a terrain that we can then import our model on top of. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to import our model. So we're just going to go down to import and click on import. And we're going to find our file. And we're also going to go in this drop down, and you want to make sure that under collapse, you want to make sure that you keep the hierarchy that's in here. You do not want to select collapse by material. And then that's going to be really important, because that's going to affect the way the model is set up over here in your organizational pane, the outliner or the model stack or whatever you want to call this. We're also going to check the box for fix UV and texture and click OK. And what that's going to do is that's going to import our building model into Twinmotion. So you can see how it's currently reading the data, and in just a second it's going to drop that in here and we can do a little bit more with it. And so the first thing you're going to notice is the only thing that got brought in here was our two-dimensional trees. And the reason for that is because inside of SketchUp we had hidden all of the three-dimensional trees. And so if objects are hidden inside of your SketchUp model, that means they're not going to show up when you do your import into Twinmotion. And so what we're going to do in this case is we're going to unhide this over here, and then I'm just going to save this. And if you remember in the last video, we talked about how to sync that change with Twinmotion. And so we're going to let this save. And then once our model change is saved, we're going to go over into Twinmotion and we're going to find our import file and we're just going to click on refresh. And so refresh is just going to basically recheck this model and update based on any changes that we made in here. So once we've done that, what's going to happen is all the different kinds of trees are going to show up inside of Twinmotion. So now you can see how my two-dimensional trees show up in here as well as my three-dimensional trees. And you can see how grouping these and grouping everything makes it really easy to find what you're looking for. But what we want to do in this case is now we want to find these trees and we want to use the replace function in order to swap out the placeholder geometry inside of SketchUp with some real Twinmotion trees. And so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to replace some of these trees. And so in order to do that, we're going to use the window over here. And so the window over here, what that allows us to do is that allows us to select the different individual objects that are inside of your Twinmotion rendering that came in from your external model. So in this case, for example, if I go into the deciduous 2D trees, you can see how every one of these trees that were organized inside of our model shows up in here now. And so what I can do is I can do a shift click and I can select all of these. So you can see how if I move these up and down, all of them are going to move because I have them all selected over here in your outliner. Well, what I want to do is I want to take all of these trees and I want to swap them out for Twinmotion geometry or Twinmotion tree objects, because the two-dimensional trees don't really look very good. They don't really make sense in this context. And so in order to do that, what I need to do is I need to have all of these selected, and I'm just going to right click on one of these and I'm going to click on the button for replace object. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to replace all of the objects that I have selected. So you can see how as soon as you do this, this little window pops up that says replace object, and it says to drop here. And if you remember, this is very similar to the vegetation placement mode where you drop models in here in order for them to be placed. We're telling this what to replace these trees with. And so we have all of these trees selected. Well, now we want to go into our library and we want to find some trees to replace these with. And so one thing you could do is you could find one kind of tree and drag it down here and click on the button for start replace. And so what that's going to do is that's going to replace every one of these selected objects with the tree that we had selected in here. And you can see how these are now all now selected, and I can use these scale tools and other things down here to adjust these a little bit. And so this replaced all of these with the one tree that I had dragged in there, which is fine, but they're kind of uniform. So meaning that they're all kind of the same look, the same kind of tree, all of that. And that's a little bit boring. So what I want to do instead is I want to do a Control-Z to undo this so that these trees are back where they were before, and we're going to do this again. So I have all of these selected. I'm going to right click and I'm going to click replace object, but in this case I'm going to drag in 3 different kinds of trees. I'm going to drag in all 3 of these black gum trees, and then once I've done that, I still have all of these selected. And if I click on the button for start replace, what that's going to do is that's going to randomly place these trees. That's going to randomly replace these objects with these different trees. Meaning now if I look at this, all of those trees that I had in here got replaced with a different kind of tree, just kind of randomly. And maybe what'll show this a little bit better is if we undo that and we drag in a few different kinds of trees. So let's say we click on replace object, and now we'll drag in a couple of these black gum trees, but we'll also drag in maybe one of these elm trees, maybe like a birch tree or something like that. I'm going to stay away from the spruces. We'll go ahead and leave it like this. So now you'll be able to see the difference a lot better. So if I click on start replace, you can see how this randomly placed all those different kinds of trees, the black gums, the birches, all of those in here really quickly. So this can be really important or really helpful when you're setting up your SketchUp models, because a lot of the time you want to show these inside of your SketchUp model for whatever reason, whether you're creating plans or something like this. Well, this allows you to replace those inside of Twinmotion without having to place a whole bunch of trees using the place tree tools. And so we can do the same thing over here. And honestly, I'm a little bit confused with these 3D pine trees, because originally I was having some issues with these because they had multiple parts inside of them. So they had a group for the trunk, and then they also had a group for those 2D images that are making up the trees inside of SketchUp. For whatever reason, those aren't showing up in here, so we'll go ahead and just replace these as well. So we're just going to do the same thing where we select all of these, right click, and click Replace Object. And we may replace a couple of these with some pine trees. So maybe blue spruce, maybe one of these Norway spruces, and go ahead and click Start Replace. So you can see how what that does is that replaces all of those trees in here. You need to be a little bit careful because what that did is that replaced these kind of at the center of that tree, I think. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drag these down so that they kind of intersect with our ground. And this is something that you may have to do some fine adjustment on the individual trees as well. So that's where I'm going to end this video. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought. Did you know about this trick? Is it helpful to you? I just love having that conversation with you guys. If you liked this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new rendering content every week. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.